Hi guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zickery of Space Command and many other things. You may be fans of the Twilight Zone Companion for all I know. So I'm up here in Morro Bay with Elaine. We're taking a few days to kind of decompress, having a lovely time by the ocean. And but I wanted to check in and also talk about some of the things going on in the world that I wanted to opine about. So the name of this little video entry is Why I Love Elon Musk, and appropriately, I'm wearing my I Am Moving to Mars t-shirt. So, which I'm getting a lot of people going, yeah, me too, buddy, as I'm wearing this thing around town today. But I know that Elon Musk has his problems as a industrialist. I know that he's been very difficult in terms of unions, in terms of paying people appropriate wages, in terms of not staying COVID, protective, so forth. And yes, these are all of concern. But here's what I love about Elon Musk and what makes me such a fan of what he's doing. I've mentioned before that I grew up reading Robert Heinlein, of course, and all the other great science fiction writers, and many of their stories would talk about some crazy industrialist who funds space exploration, the first rocket to the moon or the first rocket to Mars, and I never thought we would see that in my lifetime, because NASA, and other governments, the Soviet Union and so forth, had pretty much cornered the market on big rockets sending people out into outer space. But of course, what happened was that we pulled everything back after the moon landing, and we had the space shuttle, but in terms of visiting other worlds, manned missions just stopped. But here's what I like about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, I read his a biography on him, and he talked about when he was young, he decided he wanted to be a superhero, and he said, what would that be like in the real world? What could I do that would make the world a better place? And he basically thought, okay, cars that don't burn gasoline, so they don't add global warming, solar power, which could, again, get us off the grid, and traveling to Mars, space flight. And those are the things that he actually turned his attention to once he made his initial fortune. Now, they just announced that he's the second richest man in the world, which is actually fairly amazing, because I can understand someone like Jeff Bezos, with Amazon being the second richest man in the world, but it's really surprising that Tesla's number 2, considering, everything about other people in the world and so forth. But let me just walk around the Elon stuff and talk about it for a few minutes, just for the fun of it, because he really is like a character out of 1950s science fiction, a larger-than-life kind of guy. And just to put things in perspective, most gazillionaires are more like Donald Trump or many of the wealthy people we see, where they're basically, they make a fortune and they invest it in themselves, or maybe they've got a charity going that helps kids or whatever, but they're not taking the long view on humanity's future, the very long view, whereas Elon Musk has. And so let me unpack it a little. I just test drove a Tesla the other day, and while I'm still, driving the Honda and Elaine's Camry for a while now, the Tesla's a wonderful car, and it, it's very different from a gas-powered car. It's very different from how cars have been up until now. I mean, if you were a time traveler from the 1930s and you arrived to the present, you could still find a lot of cars that operated very much the same. They, turn the key in the ignition, you shift into gear, you use the steering wheel, you look at the gas gauge, all of that, very, very much the same. I mean, newer cars don't have ignition, keys and so forth, but if you have a car that's 10, 15 years old, it would. And but with the Tesla, again, a lot of stuff you can trigger with your phone. It just has that iPad in the middle of the dash, so there's no standard, gauges, etc. Very, very different. But most importantly, the acceleration, of course, completely different, because it's not dropping down into different gears. It just goes, and you can also have it stop, progressively, and you don't have to do that. And for another 10 grand, when it's ready, they'll have self-driving cars, which is not exactly nailed down quite yet, but I think it will be in the next few years, where you won't necessarily die by, saying, take me to San Francisco automobile. But it's still a very, very cool thing, and it really helps. It really is forward looking. It really is a car of the 21st century. In terms of solar power, I perfectly understand why one would want to do that. Then there's the Hyperloop and all of that technologies. These are all technologies that make life better, that will make life better as we move forward. But for me, most importantly, is Mars. And the reason is because ever since I was a kid and read the Martian Chronicles and many other of the wonderful stories about Mars by many of the science fiction writers, I love, one of my favorite titles of any story ever is "I'm in Marsport without Hilda." Which, great. And so we use Marsport and Space Command, of course. And I was trying to think of, if I want to have name a city after Elon Musk, what would it be? And I thought of Marsville and Muskville and Musktown, and then I came up with Muskopolis, and I rather like that. But here's why I think he's so cool and what he's doing is so cool, despite all of the negatives. And I do not in any way dismiss the negatives. I mean, absolutely. Here's the cool part. Ever since the moon landing, NASA has been saying 30 years from now, a Mars landing, 30 years from now, a Mars landing, and they always kick the can down the road. And you might get President Bush or President Obama or President Trump even saying, let's go to Mars. But there's no teeth in it. It doesn't happen. And whereas with the unmanned probes, Voyager and Curiosity and all of that, we have gotten to Mars, and it's been terrific. But you always have the feeling that a human being could look over to the left a few feet and say, oh, what's that thing moving there? Let's go check that out. Or look at that fossil, whatever. Humans have a great deal more adaptability and possibility because they have a curiosity that builds on itself. And A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. You don't have to pre-program it in the same way you do a probe. And but meantime, here's what I think is so cool. He's the second richest man in the world now, and he's funneling a lot of that money into Mars, into going to Mars. His rockets are working great. He sent people up into space now, and the spacesuits look very different from anything I ever imagined. Very, the cool thing, I've gotten 2 tours of SpaceX over the last few years, and what I really love about his approach to things is he doesn't build on the old technology as NASA has done, as so many others have done. He basically starts over and says, what can we do using new materials? What can we do better? What can we do smarter? And the fact that he's built a spaceship that looks exactly like something from Destination Moon or When Worlds Collide is, again, I never in my life thought we would see a stainless steel spaceship shaped like, a bullet, and that lands vertically. Just remarkable. And so he is basically, I never thought, it's funny, sometimes when you have a dream, an expectation of the future, like with 2001, we expected when that came out in 68 that we would have all that stuff in 2001. Maybe not the aliens taking us through the wormhole or whatever, but the rest of it, yes. And we didn't get those things. And there comes a point where you say, well, we didn't get that, and I guess we'll never get that. The space station orbiting, centrifugally, and all those wonderful things, the moon colony. But Elon Musk, the idea of an industrialist taking us to Mars, I'd let go of that dream. And now here it is again. And I think he is absolutely serious. And he may be a few years off. He may have to kick the can, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years. But he's going to get us there unless something hugely impedes him. And also, another thing I want to talk about in that regard, he doesn't just want to send, 1 person, 3 people to Mars. He wants to send, 1 million. And as crazy as that may seem, his idea is, again, he's looking long term. And it's sort of like, the dinosaurs got wiped out. We're a very young species. Definitely asteroids hit the Earth periodically. Definitely they cause extinction events. And, who knows what our sell-by date is. Who knows when humanity will be done. But definitely if we are a 2-planet species, it increases our chance of survival. It definitely does. And some people will say, well, Mars is a very, very, very alien and rugged place to live. And that's true. But here are the things that people forget. First of all, Scientists, when you watch a lot of these space travel things, these TV shows and movies, with the exception of a movie like The Martian, uh, they get it completely wrong on what astronauts are like and what scientists are like, because they have an enormous excitement and enthusiasm for what they're doing. When Apollo 1 burnt up, the 3 astronauts inside, they were killed. That didn't stop the program, and that didn't stop those astronauts from continuing Apollo and landing on the moon. And I recently watched a documentary on the Challenger disaster, and Krista McAuliffe was the first teacher in space, she was going to be. And her standby person, if she hadn't been able to take the flight for any reason, there was a secondary female astronaut who would have, and she was there at the launch when it blew up. And as with everyone, she was horrified and devastated, but she didn't resign from being an astronaut. As soon as she could get up on the shuttle and fulfill her mission, she did, and she was thrilled to do so. She felt a sense of mission. She felt a sense of the great honor it is, and the great privilege and the great possibility it is to be an explorer, to be an astronaut. And so when they say that going to Mars and living on Mars is dangerous, well, of course it is. Coming to America and setting up Jamestown was dangerous. I mean, how many people died in Jamestown? And then there's, Croatoan, Roanoke, where they vanished, and now they're saying what happened to them, but it took centuries to find out what happened to those folks. And it's dangerous. You're going into the unknown, and will people die? Can people die? Yes, it's a possibility. But is it worth doing? Yes, of course it is, because we're a very, very bifurcated race as a species, the human race. When we're left to our own devices without a larger vision, we tear ourselves to pieces. And we have wars, we have famines, we have all these things that are totally unnecessary, but we're crazy. And that old wiring, that old craziness kicks in, and we just tear everything up. And if we have a larger mission, a larger vision, if we're following a goal, that stuff tamps down, that stuff quiets down. And so the notion of going to an alien planet, of living there, of finding out what's there, and then beyond, and really, will we take all of our flaws, all of our weaknesses, all of our evil with us? Yeah, sure, eventually, yes, just as we did to America. But America opened up enormous possibilities, and space does too. It's wonderful. And the cool thing about space is that every direction you look, everything you look at, is not only as good as we thought it would be, it's better. So all of the Jovian and Saturnian moons, Pluto, all of these things are so much more complicated, so much more interesting. And I personally believe that life is ubiquitous, that everywhere we look, we're going to find it for the most part. If there's water, if there's a possibility of it blossoming there. I think the thermal vents have proved that here. And so will people go to Mars? Yes. Will Elon Musk probably be the guy who does it? Yes. Unless it's China. It certainly is not going to be NASA left to its own devices. I don't believe they're going to be the ones to do it, unless it's in cahoots with Elon Musk. But you need someone who just absolutely is determined and will not stop, and an obsessiveness, like Wernher von Braun. Again, he was a Nazi. He was, he was in the SS. He was, he employed slave labor. He was guilty of war crimes, and in any moral universe, he would have been convicted, and that would have been that. But fortunately, they needed him to build missiles here, and but his obsession was going to the moon and then to Mars, and his vision for going to Mars was a sound one, perfectly sound. And he quit NASA when they wouldn't go to Mars, and now we've got another chance. And so these obsessives, God bless them. They have clay feet, of course they do, and that's not to forgive Wernher von Braun, certainly, and it's not to forgive Elon Musk. But I look up at Mars, and just like Ray Bradbury, who was a fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs, when he was a kid, he'd go out and lift his arms to Mars and say, "Mars, take me home." And I don't think Mars is home, but I think it's definitely a beacon that beckons us to find out what's there and beyond. So that's it for now. I just wanted to have my 2 cents on this. If anyone wants to give me a Tesla, please send it my way. And also we're working hard on Space Command, finishing the second hour with all the VFX. They're looking great. And lots to come. It's going to be a very exciting year, and I'm like all of you, I'm sure I'll be very glad when we get past the pandemic and get on with things. But we've been getting on with things during the pandemic as we can, and we haven't been slowed or stopped at all. And I'm grateful to that. I'm grateful to Elaine. I'm grateful to Dave Edison and David Bartlett and Michelle and Angelique and all of our team who keep things moving and keep a smile on my face. So that's it for now, guys. And we'll be checking in very, very soon. And thanks for everything. So take care and stay safe. Bye, guys.